Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into something pretty fascinating, how the super wealthy are buying property in Singapore.
Yeah, Singapore's been this global hub for wealth for a long time now, hasn't it? Political stability, rule of law, strong economy.
Exactly. It attracts a lot of ultra high net worth families, especially from Asia and the Middle East. They're looking beyond just business. They want long-term property investments, somewhere safe to preserve their wealth.
And it's not just that they're buying, it's how. We're seeing some pretty sophisticated strategies.
Right, not just straightforward purchases. So today we're diving into one specific technique, using trusts.
That's it. Using trust structures to acquire property in Singapore is quite an advanced planning method.
Okay, so maybe we should start with the basics. What exactly is a trust in this situation?
Sure. At its core, a trust is a legal setup, a fiduciary arrangement, technically,
Clear.
meaning you have a trustee, that's the person or entity you trust, who holds and manages assets, like property. And they do that for the benefit of someone else, the beneficiary. It's all within a defined legal framework.
Is this, something only the incredibly rich can use? Or is it more accessible?
Well, it's true that trusts are a classic tool for generational wealth transfer for the wealthy. But in Singapore, trusts operate under the Trustees Act,
Which is based on...
largely based on English trust law. So it's a pretty robust and familiar system for many international players. It means anyone, theoretically, could use a trust to safeguard assets within Singapore law. Sophisticated, yes, but not inherently exclusive.
Got it. And what kinds of trusts are typically used for buying property there?
Our sources highlight two main types. First, you've got the discretionary trust,
And discretionary meaning.
meaning flexible. The trustee has significant discretion. They get to decide how income or capital is distributed among a group of beneficiaries.
So they can adapt as things change.
Exactly. Lots of control and adaptability.
Okay, that's one type. What's the other?
The other common one is the family trust. Pretty much what it sounds like.
Set up for the family.
Right. Specifically for family benefit, usually designed with long-term goals in mind, often thinking across generations.
So here's the big question then. Why bother with a trust? Why not just buy the property directly or maybe through a company? What's the real advantage?
That's a key point. Trusts are different. Different from owning it yourself and different from using a company.
How so? Privacy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part of it. With a company, some details might be public record. A trust deed, generally not filed publicly. So more privacy.
Okay, and beyond privacy.
More importantly, perhaps, is asset protection. If you own property directly, it's part of your personal estate, liable for your debts, potentially.
Right.
But assets in a trust, they form a separate legal entity, an external estate. That can shield them from certain risks.
Interesting, like a protective bubble.
Sort of, yeah.
So, okay, the mission for us today is to really get under the hood here. Understand why wealthy families use trusts for Singapore property, how it works, what the catches are.
Exactly. Give you a clearer picture of this whole strategy.
Let's start with that why. Why go through the complexity of a trust?
Well, number one is probably asset protection, like we just touched on.
Shielding it from problems.
Precisely.
Yeah.
If the trust is set up right, the assets inside are generally protected from the personal liabilities of the beneficiaries, or even the person who set up the trust, the settlor. Think lawsuits, bankruptcy, maybe even divorce settlements.
So it's like building a legal firewall around the property.
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
What else drives this decision?
Estate planning and succession management. This is huge,
Making inheritance smoother.
much smoother. Trust can help you avoid the whole probate process.
Which is the court process for a will, right? Can be long and public.
Exactly. A trust lets the property pass according to the settler's wishes, often without those delays or potential legal fights. More direct, more controlled.
Makes sense. Now, what about the money side? You mentioned tax efficiency.
Yes. Now, Singapore itself is attractive, tax-wise. No estate duty, no capital gains tax. But for international families.
Ah, they have tax obligations elsewhere.
Right. Their global tax situation can be complex. A trust, structured correctly, can help manage that overall exposure. It might offer some protection against inheritance or estate taxes in other countries.
So it's about navigating the global tax net.
It can be a tool for that, yes.
You also mentioned privacy again earlier. How does that work in practice?
Well, compared to owning property in your own name, or even a company name which might be traceable back to individuals on land registers, a trust offers more confidentiality about who ultimately benefits.
The beneficiaries.
Yes. Now, the trustee's name, the legal owner, will be on the public record. That's unavoidable.
But the people who actually get the benefit can stay more behind the scenes.
Generally, yes. It adds a layer of discretion, not total anonymity, but less direct visibility.
Okay. And the last advantage you mentioned was control and flexibility.
This is where those trust types really matter. The person setting up the trust, the settlor or the trustee, following the rules in the trust deed, can set conditions.
Conditions for what?
For when or how beneficiaries get the assets. Maybe they have to reach a certain age or hit specific milestones, like graduating.
Ah, so you can guide things a bit. Prevent impulsive decisions by, say, younger heirs.
Exactly. It allows for guiding how wealth is used, preserving family values, ensuring it aligns with longer-term goals. It's not just giving wealth, but managing how it's received.
Right. I can see the appeal. It sounds very powerful, but I'm guessing Singapore doesn't just let anyone do anything with trusts and property. What are the rules?
Absolutely not. There's a strong legal framework. Very clear regulations, especially for residential property. Let's talk about the Residential Property Act, the RPA.
Okay, the RPA, what's the main point there?
The general rule is pretty strict. Non-residents and foreign companies cannot buy landed residential property in Singapore. Villas, bungalows, that sort of thing.
Okay, that's clear. But you said trusts are used, so there must be exceptions.
There is one, a very, very narrow one.
Which is a...
If a trust is irrevocable, meaning you can't just cancel it later, and it's set up solely for the benefit of a minor who is a Singapore citizen.
Solely for a Singaporean child. Okay.
Then the Land Dealings Approval Unit, the LDAU, might approve the purchase. But it's subject to extremely strict conditions and intense scrutiny.
So it's really tough to get approval.
Very tough. It really underscores Singapore's policy on limiting foreign ownership of landed homes. It's not some easy workaround.
Got it. So that's the LDAU for landed property. What other bodies are involved?
The Urban Redevelopment Authority, the URA. They handle land use planning.
And their role with trusts.
Even if you fit that narrow RPA exception for landed property, the URA demands full disclosure. Who are all the parties involved?
Transparency is key.
Absolutely. And even if you tick all the boxes on paper, approval isn't automatic. They assess each case individually.
Right. And the financial regulator, MAS.
Yes, the Monetary Authority of Singapore. If your trustee is a professional like a licensed trust company, they fall under MAS regulation, which means they have to follow strict rules. Anti-money laundering, AML, know your customer, KYC checks, tax transparency rules.
So lots of due diligence required.
Definitely. If you're using a regulated trustee, expect thorough checks. It adds another layer of compliance.
Okay, so a tightly regulated environment. Can we make this more concrete? Maybe walk through a couple of real-world type examples.
Sure. Let's imagine some rich expats, say a European couple living and working long-term in Singapore.
Okay.
They have a young child who is a Singaporean citizen. They want this child to inherit a landed property later on, maybe when they turn 25.
Right.
They could try to set up an irrevocable discretionary trust with the child as the only beneficiary. Then they'd have to apply for that rare LDAU approval.
If they get it.
If they get it, the trust buys the property. This could protect it from claims against the parent's other global assets and ensures the child inherits as planned. It hits asset protection and succession planning.
That makes sense. What's another scenario? Maybe not landed property.
Okay, how about condo investments? Think of a wealthy family, maybe from elsewhere in Southeast Asia, running a family office.
Right.
They might set up a family trust specifically to buy several condominium units in Singapore. Not landed, so fewer RPA issues, but still using a trust.
And why use a trust for condos?
They could appoint a licensed trustee to manage these condos, collect rent, handle upkeep. The goal would be generating income for the family beneficiaries and preserving that capital across generations, long-term investment and wealth preservation.
Okay, those examples really help illustrate the why. But it can't all be upside. What are the big drawbacks or things people absolutely must consider?
Oh, there are definitely significant limitations. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Additional buyer's stamp duty, or ABSD.
Ah, yes. Singapore's property cooling measures. How does that hit trusts?
Hard. Purchases made through trusts, even those specific irrevocable ones for minor citizens, generally get hit with the highest ABSD rate.
Which is currently?
Can be up to 65%. 65%, that's a massive upfront cost.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge consideration, a real barrier.
It forces a very serious calculation. Are the benefits of the trust worth that immediate, very large tax hit?
What else? Any tax loopholes with trusts?
That's a common misconception. There are no automatic tax exemptions just because it's in a trust.
So putting property in a trust doesn't magically make taxes disappear.
Not at all. The tax residence of the individuals involved, their worldwide income and assets, all that still matters. Standard tax rules apply.
Okay, good clarify. What about the actual running of the trust?
Well, that brings us to complexity and cost. Setting these up isn't cheap. You've got legal fees, tax advice fees, ongoing fees for the trustee if you use a professional.
It's not a one-off thing.
Definitely not. And you need to review the trust structure regularly. Laws change, family circumstances change. It needs ongoing maintenance to stay effective and compliant.
Sounds like you really need good advisors.
Which leads to the next point, the absolute need for expert advice.
You can't really DIY this.
Not advisable, no. You're dealing with complex trust law, property law, international tax implications, regulatory approvals. You need a team.
What kind of team?
Typically a specialist trust lawyer, a tax advisor who understands both Singaporean and relevant foreign tax systems, maybe your family office advisor coordinating it all. High-level interdisciplinary expertise is crucial.
Okay, so let's say someone understands the pros and cons, has the resources, and wants to proceed. What are the steps to actually set up a Singapore trust for property?
First step, always, is define your objectives. Be crystal clear. Why are you doing this? Asset protection, succession, investment, education fund.
Start with the why.
Exactly. That purpose guides everything else.
Then what? Assemble the team.
Yes. Engage professional advisors,
Mm.
lawyers, accountants, estate planners who really know Singaporean trust law and how it fits with your wider wealth goals.
And choose the manager.
Appoint the trustee. This is critical. Needs to be someone responsible. Could be a trusted individual, a professional trust company, maybe a bank's trust department. They hold legal title and have that fiduciary duty.
The legal obligation to act in the beneficiary's best interests.
Precisely.
Then you write the rules down.
Correct. You draft the trust deed. This is the core legal document. It details everything. Terms, conditions, powers, duties, how property is managed, how money is distributed, protections.
That sounds like the blueprint.
It is.
Yeah.
Then you make it official. Register and execute the trust. Sign the deed, meet all the legal and regulatory bits. If you're buying property, this is where specific RPA declarations might come in.
Okay. And the final step is the actual property purchase.
Yes, the trustee buys the property in their name, but clearly acting as trustee. That's what creates that crucial separation between legal ownership, trustee, and beneficial ownership, beneficiaries.
Which gives the privacy and protection benefits.
That's the idea. It's a very deliberate multi-step process.
It certainly sounds detailed and requires serious planning. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways for our listeners?
Okay, in a nutshell, for the very wealthy, using trusts in Singapore can offer real pluses. Strong asset protection, smoother inheritance, potential global tax planning help, more privacy, and control over how assets are handled down the line.
And it's a big but.
Yes, a
Okay.
very big but. It's
Right.
not simple or cheap. That huge ABSD rate is a major factor. No automatic tax breaks. It's complex, costly to set up and run.
And you absolutely need that top-tier expert advice.
Couldn't stress that enough.
Yeah.
Navigating the legal and financial maze requires specialists.
So the final thought is, trusts offer sophisticated advantages for managing wealth and property in a stable place like Singapore, but you really have to understand the intricate details, the costs, the regulations.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool, but one that demands deep understanding and careful planning. It definitely gives you a window into how ultra-high net worth individuals approach long-term wealth strategy.
A fascinating window indeed. Thanks for walking us through that complex world. And thanks everyone for joining us on the deep dive.